I just wanted to touch base with you again. In fact, I'll be probably putting up another video, maybe two, for this class because I'm a little behind. I wanted to let you know that I have been reading your discussion posts, which have been fantastic. I started at the very beginning writing, and it was taking me a lot of time. And it's not that I minded that. It's just that I thought it'd probably be better if maybe I just made comments to everybody at the same time about what I'm reading, and hopefully that will be sufficient. But they are really quite good. In fact, some are very detailed, and I really appreciated the time that you've taken to put into it, and you are offering your expertise about the subjects that we're talking about, etc. So thanks so much for that. So I just have a few things that I took from your writing that I'm really happy to see. Um, it's a law class, right? So we're thinking about um, what we must do based upon legislation, what the rules are, how we uh, classify someone as having a disability, how we use the label to get services, all that stuff, right? Okay, so what I'm liking is that you're not staying legalistic in your minds. Um, the conversations, I'll just point to a few. The issues around segregation, low expectations, and the ways that the culture tends to treat everybody with a disability alike. In other words, if you have a disability, it automatically means that you're handicapped. You know what I mean? It means that you are in a position of need. And we know that there are a lot of people who do quite well with disabilities and succeed, oftentimes without the supports that they once needed. In fact, that's something someone said in their writing that I'm trying to think where I put it. I guess it doesn't matter. But somebody wrote this piece about moving people forward so that the services that we provide are unnecessary. And that made me really happy because when we come at these things from a legal standpoint, right, it's easy to start blocking people into little groups, and then we call them a little label. We have an LD, a BD, we do that. And we talk with all of those acronyms that we organize for ourselves, and oftentimes probably are not very respectful of our students the way we do that. But it's important to think about two things. One is the value side of special ed, and that's what I'm really loving about you guys and what you're bringing forth, because you're talking about a lot of different things, um, from meeting people where they are to their uh, um, right, that was the word I was looking for, their right to be in the educational environment. Several people talked about students with behavioral difficulties and related kinds of issues and the challenges that those provide for us, and the obstacles that go along with the challenges. By the same token, though, everyone is very forward thinking again, using that term trajectory. What most of you really have demonstrated in the questions that I've asked you is that you're fully aware of how the law comes into place to help us. You're fully aware of that. You're fully aware of how the law comes in to give us the tools and the resources and the policies, the regulations that we need to make the system work. But you haven't lost your sense of the idea that we have to know a person. It's like one person was commenting, I would never make a decision based on one exam. Somebody else said the exams are great, but for me, academics, I don't want to misstate what they said or say it not as well as they did, but it was the idea that this is an indicator. Of course, we use assessments; it's an indicator, and we like that. However, they were very much like this. I just kind of got to know the kid. I got to know who the person is and everything else. Then I said a second thing, and this is just like y'all know this. It's like the reverse of the good. The reverse side to me of the good of the special ed law which is great, is the fact that it becomes sometimes really difficult to move out of the way special education is designed. Special education is a medically modeled service. Medical model means literally something is wrong, you go get medical attention. A preventative model is when you go to the doctor and the doctor says, "Tell me how your diet is," and oh, let's have some more of this. Like nothing's wrong, you're just taking care of it, right? That's a preventive model. But the medical model says you have to have something wrong to come in the door. The insurance company is not going to pay your doctor unless you have the flu. Okay, it's the same thing in special education. We really can only make services available to people when we find them eligible, which basically means that we're on a mission to find bad stuff, negative results, negative outcomes, the things that make families feel defeated, all that stuff, because we have to basically pour it on. In a few occasions when I've had to write a letter well, I'll just give one example, for a kid who needed a wheelchair, and they were trying to get something through Medicaid or Medicare, and I said to the family, "Listen, I'm going to tell you before you even pick this letter up, I'm going to make your son sound really pitiful." I said, "It's not a lie. I'm just going to make it the worst I can make it. Nothing's untrue. I would never lie professionally, but I meant I'm not going to try to sweeten it a little bit." And so the mom said, "I'm glad you told me that." She said it was a little depressing. He really was very disabled. And I said, "Well, right. Well, you need the services. And the best I can do for you is to really make it as bad as I can so you can get what you deserve." Do you hear how that? As bad as I can. Make your kid look as bad as I can so you can get the services. That sometimes slips into our thinking. It sometimes moves in too far into our spaces of the work that we do. And we have to be really, really careful about that, okay? Because if we get stuck sometimes and we don't know what to do, or we're sick of our boss, or, we need another classroom assistant and we don't have one, and you're just exhausted or whatever, sometimes it gets really easy to shorthand. And one of the best ways we can shorthand is just stick to the law. That's where he goes. That's what he's supposed to do. And let it go. And that's I've seen that done sometimes in districts where, that they generally poorly run schools. But anyway, it is a possibility that it could happen. So when I was reading your discussions, again, your replies, I was really taken with how you really seem to understand both sides of the puzzle, which is this law kicks ass and this law can kick your ass. Okay, so you got to be careful how you make sure figure out which ass we want to be kicking or something. Oh, this is probably going to go on the university somewhere. Anyway, so you get the point though about how we would want to make sure that we balance, measure, have a mediated approach to what we're doing with the students that we serve. Getting back to that idea of the law, someone said too, several people said in different ways, they made the distinction that just because you can do something doesn't mean it's appropriate to do something. So just because the students by law, whatever, can sit and take a test does not mean it's appropriate for them to take it. I also was really taken with how many people spoke about how they would try to be preventive or use preventive ways, strategies to keep children calm, together, whatever, who get anxious around testing or those sorts of things, and sort of making it so that when you were looking at the big picture of this kid, you were able to try to help this kid kind of incorporate something that may be really unrealistic into his or her world for hopefully not too long. I was just at a school where they were doing that, and it's just so sad because some of the kids just don't, Well, you know what? That's probably the question, though, really. Let me debate myself. That's probably really the question, in a way. This is where the divide probably comes down. Is that And somebody else said this too. Someone else said about there was nothing wrong with assessments, but like that doesn't mean everybody has to do it or something. Some such thing. The point is, and I agree with this student. The point is, I'm not against students taking assessments per se. I don't care how disabled they are. That doesn't. It's not the assessment. It is what is the point, right? Like, is this really going to tell me anything about the kid that I need to know? Or am I just collecting point chits for the school board who, needs more data? I don't know, whatever. And I don't mean to get political, but, based upon what you think is going to happen with it, certainly would have a lot to do with how you would sort of factor in, I don't know, not just your approaches to it, but I know what I'm trying to say, kind of your ability to maintain it. Like sometimes when I don't, I'm just part of a game, like I'm just part of it. And I got to do it. I got a mortgage. I can make sense out of it. Just make it more fun for the kid. So anyway, but the other thing that was talked about that I really appreciated was the fact that when you are in these circumstances around some of the trickier sorts of issues, but especially I came up in assessment, the importance of parent communication, how you would support parents, how you would want parents to be made aware of important information or that you would be available to them. That was incredibly important for me to hear because in many parts of special education, we put parents on edge. Okay, oftentimes they already feel judged when they come in. Like you think, like they aren't parenting right, or if their kid's done something wrong, it's their fault. Whatever. They bring some baggage in the door, but there's nothing like assessment to be, you know, tough to hear. That's really the worst for some families. I will tell you that when I don't know how old I was, but I had just started diagnosing, and I guess I was in my I was there at a center where I was working with young kids with disabilities, and I was really practicing how to disclose. And so, I remember thinking I looked like one of those really cool doctors on TV, who's like, I'm really sorry, but Mr. Melton, your mother has blah, 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 right? That's what I thought. So I diagnosed this kid with autism spectrum disorder. And then I worked for the family for a long time. In fact, I just had dinner with them not long ago. They were in Chicago. I've known them for years. Their son's now almost 30, so that's kind of scary. Anyway, but we got along really great. And so one day in a conversation, she said, "I know, I can't believe we like you so much. We thought you were such a, I won't say the word, big butthead. When we met you, you're just like, yeah, your kid's got autism." I don't remember saying it that way at all. But in hindsight, when they told me, I think what I was trying to do was get it out, and then do my questions or something. It's hard to learn how to do it. I mean, now I can do it. I mean, now it's just a conversation. It's okay. But I was nervous about those words coming out of my mouth. So, which, not to go off on another tangent, but that's a point to make as well, is that when you're good to parents, they will come back. They'll forgive you of things. If they know you're a good person, they will. Because she said it did hurt their feelings and kind of made them mad. That's why I was surprised, and I didn't hear about it probably 10 years later or something. So anyway, so I have some experience with that piece, and it is important that you do pay attention ahead of time to the information that you're going to be giving, that you do pay attention to what kinds of things might be hot words for the parents and those sorts of things that would make it really difficult for them maybe to hear the information that you have. But we have to present it, right? So it's not like it can't be presented, but we have to be able to do it in a way that the parents will get on board with us. The other piece about assessment and parents is that I say this to my students all the time in my undergrad program. I always say to them that the best assessment tool they have as a parent is a mother's intuition, and I really believe that about like 99% of the time. Mothers just seem to get their kids. I don't know what it is, but they just seem to know something's wrong. You know, something like you'll hear mothers, like a kid finally gets a diagnosis of on the spectrum, you know, 4 or 5, and the mother's furious because she was talking to the doctor at 6 months, and they just said, you know, it's your first baby and stuff like that. Anyway, so parents, and I don't mean to knock dads out of it by any stretch because they can be incredibly helpful too. But when you have moms and dads, either or both, they oftentimes have such good information for you when it comes to the kinds of assessment um, material context that you need, because the more you hear about what happens at home, etc., things that you're trying to do in isolation at school might make more sense at that point. Okay. Let me see if there was anything else. I'm sorry, I keep looking away. I've got this over here. Um, so I guess let me just wrap it up in this way. I really liked that the fact that you all, and I don't know if I mentioned this a minute ago or not, but that you all were very, in my mind, were coming from a developmental approach. And a developmental approach, in a way, is antithetical to the law. Let me explain what I mean. The law is kind of like this, right? And development is sort of like. So what I mean by the law in general is like we look at the No Child Left Behind and those sorts of pieces of legislation, and you're supposed to read by second grade, and you're supposed to do blah blah blah, right? At this age, developmentalists don't look at it that way. Developmentalists look at it with you get to this place when you're able to get to this place, and you can't get here until you've done this. You can't skip the step, etc. So anyway, that's kind of what I saw in your work. I was like, wow, there's all these developmentalists, and they're all really saying good things that let me know that you understand the law, you understand its application, but more importantly, that you really understand this synthesis between what really happens in the classroom, what really happens with the student, what really happens with the family, in concert with the law, and how we bring those things together really matters a lot. A lot of you brought up, by the way, the Maine school decision, which I really liked, about not being at liberty to limit the definition. I love that phrasing. I love that. And I just noticed that, and that's a good way to end, because that's kind of where I was seeing you guys coming from, is that you really sort of took the concepts of liberty, as it were, and it really more pertained to the human potential of the student and the context in which the student thrives, which is generally the home and the school, and then all of these pieces around it just totally give me hope that you have such strong values for working with students. They're going to be lucky to have you. So I'll be back again soon with the other discussion groups, and I hope you guys are doing well. Take care. Bye bye.